guys? Welcome back to another episode of Growth Path. I am super excited to have somebody on today that I spoke to a couple of times over the past couple of years. Terry and I got acquainted with one another during COVID, and actually, it's a funny story. I listened to Terry on the Joe Rogan podcast a couple of years ago, and I was like, this guy's super interesting. And I remember at the end of that podcast, Terry said, or Joe Rogan said, hey, where can people find you? You're like, I'm also on LinkedIn. And I was like, oh shit, I'm going to look at LinkedIn and connect with an astronaut on LinkedIn. So I connected together with Terry on LinkedIn, and then we got chatting, and then we did some work together with a previous organization that I was with. He came in and did some keynotes for us and so on, which was a lot of fun. But Terry's background, Terry is an executive coach and a keynote speaker. Prior to that, he was an astronaut at NASA. He also flew on the space shuttle as well as Russian Soyuz. I probably have not pronounced that very well, but I spent over 7 months in space, including as a commander on the ISS, which is the International Space Station. Prior to that, he was also a USA F-16 pilot and test pilot. And over the past years as well, Terry's been developing several TV and film projects, and has also appeared on the National Geographic, I believe, right, Terry? Terry's also a guest lecturer at Harvard Business School and the USC School of Cinematic Arts. And he also serves on a number of boards. Terry, awesome to have you on. Thanks for coming on, mate.
Yeah, it's good to be on again.
Yeah, great. Tell me, look, so first of all, what are you doing at the moment? So what's your current vocation? We know, like, astronauts background, we're gonna really dig into that. What are you up to right now?
That's a great question. I think I'm going to have some big announcements in April about my near future, but speaking is a big part of what I'm doing. I do some coaching, like you mentioned. Trying to inspire people. I talk about my time in space, which is always fun. People love that, but also, some bigger pictures of things. There's some directions that the Earth seems to be going right now that's not good in my mind. So I'm trying to bring us back from that. It's 1940 right now. I'm trying to prevent 1941 from happening. So
Okay.
that's a big part of what I'm doing. I do a class. Excuse me. I call it Why Organizations Fail. It's what I teach at the business school and for different companies. And, NASA had a lot of lessons that we learned, unfortunately, after Columbia and Challenger, our two shuttle accidents. And so it's not fun, but it's really impactful to talk through those in depth for any organization that has anything that's risky at all. It's a great lesson in lessons learned, and most importantly, how to remember or not remember. Unfortunately, as human beings, sometimes we learn things, but rarely do we remember them after we learn them. So that's
yeah, that goes back to your point about we're in 1940 right now, and we don't want to get into 1941, right? That's the yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Talking about risk, then. So obviously, being an astronaut, going to the International Space Station is a high risk job. So let's talk a little bit about that. So when were you on the International Space Station? When was that?
Yeah, my last flight, between 2010 and 2015, I did a couple of missions. I went up on the Space Shuttle Endeavour. So apologies for this cough. I've got the end of a cold, but I kind of got my Barry White voice this morning.
The audience love it, man. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of it.
Can't get enough of your love, babe. So I started on the Space Shuttle. I have some stuff here, but you can't see it in the video. And we actually finished building the space station. I was on the final quote unquote assembly flight. We brought up 2 modules, Node 3 and Cupola, and that was a 2-week flight. And then I went back a few years later with the Russians, and it was supposed to be a 169-day flight. It ended up being a 200-day flight because we got stuck, kind of like the crew that is up there right now. We only got stuck for a month, not for 8 months, but it ended up being 200 days. So I was there for a little over 7 months.
Like, when you say you got stuck, what happened?
I actually wrote a book during COVID, like a short 10 chapters, how being stuck in space is like getting stuck during COVID. So we had 3 rockets, basically capsules, blow up. SpaceX, a Russian Progress, and a orbital Cygnus. All 3 of them blew up in an 8-month period. And when the Russian one blew up, they used the same rocket, the same Soyuz rocket that the humans launch on. Their cargo ship is basically a human capsule. They take the seats out, fill it up with cargo. So they didn't want to launch the next crew on that, our replacement crew, until they did a safety investigation to make sure the same thing wouldn't happen to their replacement crew. And they didn't want to bring us back down to Earth without, they didn't want to leave the station without a full complement of astronauts. Kind of exactly what happened with these guys, except the Boeing capsule didn't blow. The Boeing capsule was fine. It was safe. It just wasn't, NASA couldn't be double, triple, quadruple sure that if all these things happen in the worst possible way, that there wouldn't be a problem. So it was a really, really unlikely case that might have happened that didn't happen to the Boeing capsule, why these guys are stuck there now. So anyway, I got an extra month in space, and we really took advantage of it. Astronauts have been getting stuck on the space station for the last 25 years. It just happens periodically for different reasons. And a lot of times they're not happy about it. They're like, and it kind of craters the morale. And I was really proud of my crew. We handled it well. We said, look, my philosophy was, I got the rest of my life on Earth. I'm going to enjoy this time in space while I have it. So we got a lot of work done. I worked on an IMAX movie called A Beautiful Planet, which is a great film. If you get a chance, go see this movie. You can buy the DVD. You can see it in science centers. That's the best way to see it. A Beautiful Planet is a great movie. It's the best way to experience the International Space Station.
It's amazing. I mean, like, I remember the last time we spoke, actually, you showed some scenes from that. Actually, when I was working with Lead Feeder, you did, I think it was a sales kickoff or something.
That's right. Yeah, I got a few. IMAX let me use a few clips. So
yeah, I remember that was amazing. That was really cool. Look, you're talking about, like, it's so funny for me. Like, I've got no like, when you're talking about this stuff, I'm like, this is like Apollo 13 shit for me. Like, this is like, like when you're talking about, I'm like, okay, this to me is like making my palms sweat. Like, when you're talking about, oh yeah, like 3 rockets blew up, and yeah, we just ended up having to stay in the International Space Station. And for you, it's like, oh yeah, 3 rockets, and this is a fairly normal thing. Like, was there never anything in your mind where you're like, okay, this could go south, like, pretty quickly, or like the fear? Like, is there any fear there for you, or how is it?
There probably should have been. If I was smart, there would have been, but
I hope you're an astronaut, man. You're
I
definitely
know.
smart.
Well, more than astronaut, I'm a fighter pilot, and I just think, people who do jobs like that, you just have to be able to, not worry about it. If you worried about that, you wouldn't be able to function. We have this period. There's alarms go off every once in a while. The alarm goes off. It's usually a false alarm. Sometimes it's some minor thing. We have caution. We have notes, cautions, and warnings. A note is just whatever. A caution is like, something's wrong. A warning's like, well, could be bad. And then we have emergencies. Emergencies, you have the procedures memorized. Everybody jumps to action. When the alarm goes off, it sounds like an emergency alarm in space. Like, there's no doubt, right? And we went through this month. We had an ammonia leak, which is an emergency. It's the most deadly. They told us if you smell ammonia, don't worry about it. You're going to die. So that's the most serious one. And the fire alarm goes off sometimes. The Russians have really bad fire detectors. They go off all the time. There's been some air leaks, real and fake, throughout the station, but the ammonia leak never goes off, and it went off. And so, we had a whole month where it was like every day the alarm was going off, and I deal with problems with humor. So I made this, I still have a picture of it. I have this yellow stickies with like Russian segment, American segment, notes, cautions, warnings, emergencies, and funny smells. And because something was burning and we were smelling this burning smoke. And like, I would put tick marks, and this whole thing is full of all these tick marks of all the things that were happening. And so at the end of that month, I remember thinking, that's enough. That's enough caution. So I wasn't like afraid, but my mental state was, all right, that I'm tired of like jumping and running to the computer and figuring out what's going on. So that was enough. And another thing, when we first got to the space station, on the shuttle, there's hardly any room. You're all crammed in this little room, sleeping on the wall and ceiling and floor. When we got to the station, we all spread out. We just found a corner of the ISS. And so I went in the European module, the Columbus module, and I slept on the ceiling by myself. I just put my sleeping bag and that's where I slept. And all night long, this thing would ping and bang and like bong, like somebody hitting a metal. And the station goes, into sunlight, into shade, into sun. The sun is the hottest hot you've ever felt, and the shade is the coldest cold, almost absolute zero. And so the aluminum is just expanding and contracting. And when I went back 5 years later, I didn't hear that. So it must have stabilized. But anyway, and I remember thinking, I don't know if I want to, this would be tough because you're in a can that's popping and you're like, I wonder if it's going to hold together. So there were a few times where I felt like, but,
so you were also leading like a team of people.
yeah. When I was commander on Expedition 43, there were 6 of us, Americans, Russians, and Italian.
And was there ever because you were leading the team, you doubts in your mind maybe. Was there ever a situation where you needed to deal with somebody on the team reacting with fear, or how would you lead somebody out of that? You need to stay calm in these situations.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really lucky when I was commander. I had a great team. Everybody was experienced. Well, everybody was actually more experienced than I was, and I was experienced except for Samantha. Samantha was a rookie, and she was like the smartest one of all of us. So I was very lucky to have a great team, and we never had. I remember when we went through that period of all these alarms going off, everybody was like, all right, that's enough of those alarms. But and when we went through the ammonia leak, man, there's a very specific set of procedures. First of all, you put your oxygen mask on so you're not breathing, and then you find everybody, you get accountability, and then you go down to the Russian segment, and there's 2 hatches between the US and Russian segment. The Russians don't use ammonia. They use glycol, which is not as good as ammonia, but it also doesn't kill you dead. So that's very Russian philosophy. Their stuff's not as good, but it has a lot of margin. It has a lot of margin, right? Like ours is like super thin aluminum, and theirs is like big, thick steel, because they know it's not good and it'll probably crack, but it's so big and thick that it'll probably hold together. So it's a different design philosophy. So you go through the first hatch. You're supposed to take off all your clothes, because if the clothes have ammonia, you don't want to bring ammonia into the clean atmosphere. But we all we're like, did you smell anything? No. Did you smell? All right. So we kept our clothes on. And anyway, so the crew, they got right up on the procedures and they handled it. So I did not have to deal with that. I could imagine that you would have to deal with it with the space tourists. That's a much bigger issue with professional NASA astronauts. I have heard there's a few stories where, the NASA astronauts historically do really well. They do really well in space. The issues that I've heard have been not from NASA astronauts. And of course, with space tourists, you look at some of the stuff that some of the billionaires tweet, and you're like, wow, I don't know that I'd want to go into space with that person, but oh well.
Yeah, some space tourism at the minute, but it's like we're still for that to be in any way affordable. Do you see that ever scaling properly? Like, do you see that ever being?
I don't, and for a simple reason of physics, F equals ma. To drive a car, you have to go 60 miles an hour. Where's your audience? Is it American, European?
Everywhere.
You got to your car goes 100 kilometers an hour. You can do that. An airplane to fly from America to Europe goes, 1,000 kilometers an hour, 800 kilometers an hour, 500 miles an hour. It costs more money to fly an airplane than it does to drive a car. To go into space, you got to go 17,000 miles an hour to get into orbit, or 25,000 kilometers an hour. It's just more money. Going into space, and you got to go from 25,000 to 0 to come back, and that is often even more of a problem. So physics is
never going to scale. It's never going to scale.
It's 1/2 mv squared, right? Energy is 1/2 mv squared. So that every time you double V, it's 4 times the energy, which is not exactly, but basically money. And 17,000 is 30 times faster than an airliner. I mean, you're going
Mm.
Mach 20, 25 times the speed of sound, so you're going 30 times faster than an airliner. So 30 squared is 900. It's 900 times the energy of an airliner.
Jesus
So
Christ.
it's going to be more dollars per trip
Yeah.
than an airliner.
Jesus. When was the last time you were in space?
2015.
2015.
Yeah.
2015. Okay.
Feels like
And like,
yesterday, but it's been 10 years.
do you reckon you'll ever go back?
I don't know. I left NASA because I'd been in the government for 30 years, and although I absolutely despise what Elon and Doge are doing, the government needs to be more efficient. So I was ready to go be an entrepreneur. You know me. I was ready to do other things, and the after 30 years, I was ready to move on. But I always said if I could make a movie, that would be fun to go back to space. But I don't anticipate that happening anytime soon.
Okay. Okay. I mean, do you miss it? I've got no concept of what it's like to be up there. Like zero concept.
For those of you who are in Austria, I'm doing a photo exhibit. A friend of mine put this photo of my space photography. It's in Graz, Austria right now. It's going to be in Vienna, I think, in June, July.
Really?
It's the
I'm based
most
in Vienna. I'm based in Vienna.
I'll be in Graz in a few weeks. Come down and see
Oh,
me.
yeah, absolutely. You need
Yeah,
to tell me when we'll catch up.
we'll get in
100%.
touch. It's
100%.
it's open to the public. It's incredible. I've never seen anything like it. The quality of these prints are amazing. It's going in Graz through the end of March, first week of April, maybe. I think the first week of April. Um, if you have a chance to go see Gottfried is his name. He did the most amazing job, and so we're hoping that this thing will go on kind of a world tour around Europe, and then maybe North America, Middle East. It's really cool. I've never seen anything like it. So that's the IMAX movie is great. Seeing this space photography exhibit is I was blown away. I was there for the opening a few weeks ago with my walker and my broken back. We were just talking about my back problems, which are better now. My back's healing, but uh, yeah, that's a really cool thing.
Like, what are the what was the first flight that you did? When was that? That was
2010.
2010.
Between 2010 and 2015 was my spaceflight era.
Apprehensive beforehand? Were you like butterflies in the tummy, or more than butterflies in the tummy? How were you feeling?
I was nervous that I would screw up, and I should have been worried about blowing up. But as a fighter pilot, as an all my buddies were watching. So,
Mm, mm,
and
mm.
you actually had to fly the space shuttle. The SpaceX capsule is completely automated. You literally can sit there and just watch movies on your iPad. The space shuttle was very manual, and I was a pilot, so I had like switches everywhere, and there was a lot I had to do. And like if I threw the wrong one at the wrong time, I could blow the spaceship up. We
Jesus
used to joke.
Christ.
Well, except for it wasn't a joke that there's no emergency that the pilot can't make worse with one switch throw. It was a very high stress, very very high stress, and I did not want to get a new nickname for doing something stupid.
For sure not. For sure not. I mean, with that type of high stress, though, how has that lent itself for you now in further endeavors in your career? I guess that's helped you massively, right? To be under that amount of stress.
Yeah,
Like,
I think it does. It helps me keep perspective. Like I'm thinking about maybe doing some pretty big decisions, and people are like, "Oh, that's don't do that," or something might go wrong, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to blow up. So whatever happens, I'm not going to blow up, or I'm not going to get shot down over Iraq. So it does help me keep things in perspective. Um,
yeah, I mean, even like something that like I was thinking about, I think we spoke about this before, perspective, right? Like when you're looking down from a space shuttle, and you're just seeing this little planet, you're seeing our planet, right? How does how does your brain react to that? Like does it put things into a lot? Because I hear that it brings a lot of calm to people and be like, okay, all this shit that we're worried about, who cares? Like, how does that actually feel? Can you
yeah,
describe it even?
it's they call it the overview effect, and for me, I think different people are affected differently. I think if you have an open mind and you're a thoughtful, empathetic person, it's really profound. I mean, it can really affect you. Um, one of the things when you look back, I do have some photography. You can't see it behind me. It's on the walls. There is a thin blue line. It is thin. And so I came away thinking, man, we have planet A and there's not a planet B. The other thing, I remember one day I was sitting on ISS, I was looking over and I was like, wait a minute, that's my planet over there. And I'm not on my planet. Like I'm here and my planet is there. That was a really
wild.
I think a light switch got flipped in my brain when that happened. And it's hit me like, man, that thing's been around for a long time. And it's going to be around for a long time. So why are we so worried about stuff? Why do there's a lot of adjectives we could come up with. Why do people like Vladimir Putin and other world leaders want to make their country great again and have battles and conflicts? And there's always going to be a few people that ruin it for the rest of us. And that's kind of, I think that's my mission for the future, is to try and bring some checks and balances back to that. Because although we are on this beautiful planet and 90% of human beings, 95% of human beings just want a peace and they want a job and they want their kids to have a good school and be safe. And, humans are humans. I've had the privilege of going to all 7 continents in the last few years. Little kids in China would come up to me wearing their little orange astronaut suits with the Chinese flag, not an American flag. And humans are humans. We're all exactly the same. The problem is when you let guys like Vladimir Putin and others, like I said, who want to make their country great again, and they end up doing really terrible things. So we need to, although, most people are good, we can get along. We really need to put the checks and balances in place to keep those monsters in check so that they don't, kill millions of people, which is, unfortunately, that's human nature.
Fully agree.
Yeah.
Especially the news on a daily basis in terms of what's happening, what people are saying, like the approach by certain newly elected presidents and others. It's concerning. Also, being in the part of the world that I live in, there's still a lot of people remember what happened less than 100 years ago.
I was just there a few weeks ago in FPR,
yeah,
Orban, Pizzo, that part of the world. I've spent a lot of time in Hungary, Slovakia, and Austria in the last few months. Yes, it's human nature. It will, in the year 2250, there's going to be leaders, and it's always men. There's going to be men that come up that want to make their country great again, and want to do terrible things. The problem now, and this really scares me, and if any of your listeners have any ideas, I'm all ears. What's happening with social media, what's happening with, news, everybody's in their echo chamber. You only hear what you want to hear, and algorithms are better than our brains. The human brains are not good. They weren't good in 1940 listening to the grosse Lüge, the big lie. In America, we have the big lie now. Here's something terrifying to brighten your day. Every senior government official, and I think there's normally like 1,000 or maybe 2,000 political appointees. So like senior US government officials, every single one of them got their job by lying blatantly. They had to go through this egregious 20 or 30-minute loyalty test. And question 1 is, who won the 2020 election? So literally 100% of every senior US government official, recent political appointee, got their job by lying. So the foundation of the American government, which needs to be the rock of the world, we need to be the beacon of freedom and hope for the world. I'm watching a show called Band of Brothers. Man,
love it.
I'm so proud of what my country did in the past by defending victims and the weak and the poor and against the big bully, evil aggressor. Everybody that got our job now in our government did it by lying. So the foundation is lie. And if you don't build your foundation of your house strong and solid, it's not going to survive when the winds come. Like that's a parable. And so that's where we're at. It's not a good place. So we need to change that.
Super excited to hear what you're going to be up to next, because it sounds as though that's what you're going to be tackling. And I'd also love to be able to get involved somehow as well, because when you feel a bit helpless a lot of the times, because what can you do? Like you feel so far away from it. But one thing I've learned, and even from contacting people like you, like you're not that far away from being able to make change, or to at least get close to people that can make changes. That's been my thing. Like I've in the past couple of years in business, I've managed to get in touch with people, I managed to interview people that I never thought I would ever get close to. And you're an example, right? So I reached out to you just because I heard you somewhere else. You're on the biggest podcast on the planet, and I
I
heard
need
you,
to
and I
go back
reached.
on Rogan. I need to reach out to Joe and go back on that. Yeah.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. 100%. But there's a. I've spoken to you. I've spoken to. I ended up speaking to Obama's right hand man, his assistant from way back when. A guy, Terry Love is the guy's name, and I just did it from reaching out. And it was always something that's something got in my head. It was like, actually, shit, you can actually make a change. Like it's not that hard to approach. You just need to go and do it. You
I'm
know?
friends with Buzz Aldrin.
Oh yeah,
25 years ago, we before I was even a test pilot, we had been in the same squadron, separated by 40 years. I just called the astronaut office. I wasn't an astronaut. I didn't know anybody there. And I said, hey, Buzz Aldrin, we're having a squadron event. I want to invite Buzz to come back to his old squadron. And I emailed him. He happened to be in Europe at the time. It was in Germany. And, 25 years later, we're still friends. 30 years later, we're still friends.
unbelievable. There you
So,
go.
here's my message. This is my message in life, Andy. Don't tell yourself no. If there's some dream you have, and I can do my whole story about how I became an astronaut. This is one of my speaking topics, but don't tell yourself no. If there's some dream you have, go. The first step is go for it. You might not get it. The bigger the dream you have is going to be hard. You're going to have, like, if you want to be a doctor, you can't just say, I want to be a doctor. You have to do a lot of stuff. But step one is don't tell yourself no. So
I love it. And we're going to have to finish on that, Terry. I could speak to you all day long, mate, but I need to jump. Thank you so much for all of your time today, Terry. I really appreciate it. And I will be in touch about that trip to Austria, by the way, because I
yeah,
definitely
let's do it.
want to catch up. Terry, thanks a million. I'll make sure that all your details and everything are shared with the audience as well. People can follow you, etc. It's been a true pleasure, mate, and speak again soon.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
See ya.
Guys, this has been another episode of Growth Path. Tune in again next week for more great content. Thanks, Terry.